Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Welcome to The Ray Taylor Show, where I bring you the reviews on the latest movies and TV shows, as well as classic and foreign films. I'm your host, Ray Taylor, and on this episode, on this podcast, I'll be talking about all things film and television. Whether you're looking for a new show to binge, or want to know if that blockbuster is worth the trip to the theater, or just want to hear my thoughts on a classic or foreign film, I've got you covered. So join me every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for new episodes, and let's dive into the world of television and film together. On this episode, it is all about TV, baby. The new Netflix series entitled Beef. This came out this year, 2023. It is created by Lee Sung Jin. It stars Stephen Yeun, Ali Wong, Joseph Lee, David Cho. This story, this TV show, is about two people let a road rage incident burrow into their minds and slowly consume their every thought and action. Overall, this was a show I was looking forward to. I am a fan of David Cho. From his artwork, from his Vice show Thumbs Up, from his former podcast DVD ASA, and I knew this was an upcoming acting project of his, which some of his co-stars, Andrew Santino being one of them, were Stephen Yeun, I believe, as well, were saying good things about his acting, so I was excited to see him in this, which I'm surprised. I'm happy that he is somewhat of a bigger role. Not the main character, however. I am also a big fan of both Stephen Yeun and Ali Wong. Ali Wong, hilarious comedian. She was fun in the rom-com that came out, Always Be My Maybe, I believe. And this is her first dramatic performance. And I gotta say, this show blew me away. I loved it. This is also the first, I believe, A24 produced TV series. But absolutely blown away. By far one of the best new shows on streaming, TV, whatever you want to call it. So good, so amazing, and this is probably going to be a long episode as I dig into this show because it is a great show. You have the idea, what I believe this show could have been called. Now, this is a term that I've only heard used in reference to Koreans by Koreans, and it is a term called Han. And I feel like this show, in many ways, encapsulates what Han is, or at least what I've perceived it to be via context clues and just listening to people like David Cho discuss what it is, what Han is. And it's something that I think is more of a term specific to Koreans, but I looked online and it's kind of had a longer history and kind of the meanings behind it have changed. But how I feel it is Han is derived from the Chinese character, which means resentment, hatred, or regret. Definitions and characteristics of Han are highly subjective. According to the translation journal, Han is frequently translated as sorrow, spite, rancor, regret, resentment, or grief, among many other attempts to explain a concept that has no English equivalent. But I've always experienced or thought of it as kind of this expression of like pent up emotions, anger, frustration. Like it is like the packed in dynamite that exists, where once the fuse reaches its destination, Han is what is expressed. And it's something that I've heard and seen and thought of in other races as well, like Irish and German have like this kind of, not necessarily a short temper, but when that when that switch is flipped, it can get kind of like passionate, let's say. And it's usually negative emotions. So while watching this, I felt like this show at one point could have been titled Han. And maybe, because I believe, even though I don't think Ali Wong is Korean, I think that her character plays somebody whose parents are from Korea, or her mom's from Korea. Steven Yeun character, his parents are Korean. So it wouldn't surprise me if that, and like a lot of David Cho's Korean, like there's a lot of Koreans in this show. Not all Koreans, Japanese as well. A great show. I love it. Could have been called Han. The story is just such a great premise in itself to examine just how complex people are when you see these two people who had this road rage incident, but it's so much more than this incident. Like, this incident just kind of sparks these two people who are both in a similarly repressed and suppressed existence, trying to do what they think they should be doing to make other people proud of them. And this is almost like this is like almost a release valve for them to get out these pent up emotions and energy that they have. And it just happens to be directed in a negative way. But you see how, the struggle they have with life decisions and how those decisions kind of led them down the paths that they're on, paths that they may regret, right? They live lives they wish they weren't living. And the cathartic nature of them raging out versus trying to focus the energy in positive, constructive ways, which there is a character that really pushes for that kind of use of the energy, but done so in one of the most unique ways, a way which I heard described as toxic positivity, and I think that's the perfect way to describe this dude's character, George. But both of those kinds of tactics for releasing this energy, they're definitely not the same. That you don't get that same cathartic feeling when you're channeling that rage into positive things. But amazing performances from both of the leads. Ali Wong, like I said, comedian. I love her stand-up. Blown away with this performance, right? Only seen her in that one rom-com, which was good. But in this, her performance is truly great. Such a layered performance within just like a scene. Like, there's so much that just her acting in her face will tell in a scene, within a scene. And it's the range of emotions that goes on in her face alone, just in so many. It's amazing. It's amazing to see. Just from an honest look to complete masking for people to absolute frustration to deep thought. It's just like cycling through all of these different emotions and feelings just from a look on her face. So amazing, so perfect. Steven Yeun, obviously an amazing actor. He is great in this. At first, it seemed like his character was a bit two-dimensional, but as the show goes on, he himself has much depth as well. Obviously, great performance from him. Great moments, great scenes that really show his range. And all the supporting performances, including David Cho, are all amazing performances. They're all great. I mean, there's not a whole lot of actors in this, but everybody that is and their characters they play are perfect. They're spot on. And David Cho also, I noticed, did all the title cards. The only one I'm not sure on is the very first episode. But all the other ones are for sure David Cho pieces of art that are the title cards. And the title cards are great. The titles of these episodes are great. They both fit the kind of theme and the energy of the show. And also, there are some like things, through lines that go through. Like, there's an aspect of this that has to do with crows. And the very first title is in reference to birds. And so there are these things where everything feels like it fits and it has a purpose, which is good. It's good to have a show or any kind of narrative thing that, like, you could tell there was like care put into how it was made, and it was made for a purpose. Through the course of the show, like, because of the events forcing both of these characters to express themselves in ways that put out right the norm for them, that is out of the norm for them, uh, it just allows these characters to be fleshed out in a way that you really don't see in most shows, because you don't, like, you can have anti-heroes in shows, but none of those shows, I believe, really show the complexity of a human as much as these people do, where they're at the same time bad people and good people. And also, because of that, it allows for the people around them who are affected by the way they're acting to also show a multitude of emotions. And there are things that side characters, motivations that side characters have, that also play into this story as well. We also get flashbacks to see kind of how our main characters, Danny and Amy, were as children. The kind of a big theme of this show is how people make just decisions throughout their life, and how after making a lifetime of decisions, you realize that maybe you're not the person you thought you were going to be, or the people that you show, like the person after those decisions, you are hiding so much of who you are because you've strayed so far from who you thought you would be. So it really, getting these flashbacks really kind of fleshes out and shows the background, kind of how maybe these people started on their path to making bad decisions, trying to make people happy and not wanting to disappoint them, thus at an early age starting to hide who they were. And then also what happens when that person you're hiding for your life starts to break out, starts to come out, right? In ways that are almost like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And like I said, because we are with these people who are at the same time good people but also bad people, they become really sympathetic in ways that most anti-heroes like Breaking Bad aren't, I would say. Even though I think Walter White is definitely a sympathetic character, but these characters, I would say, are more so. And more like realistic. Like, there's definitely an aspect to Walter White that feels, like elevated for a show. Versus this, like, could feel like it could be you in some ways. I would imagine everybody on some level has done this, and culturally more so than others, I'm sure, kind of that repressed, trying to pretend you're somebody that you're not, to sustain the pride people have in you. And it's amazing how even in like episodes or even just in scenes, how people will fluctuate between being those kinds of people, from being honest to wearing that mask. And it's amazing to kind of see that as well. And before I get into spoilers, I do want to say that it was a show that I never expected would make me cry by the end of it. But this show, the kind of almost like the very last shot of this show, up until I didn't expect I was gonna cry, and then it just all built up and it got me, and it's a wild ride. This show, it is a wild ride. You're seeing people do things and go places you may not have ever expected, which is something I always love about a show. I love a show that can surprise me, especially a show that feels grounded and real, right? Which I would say in some ways Breaking Bad is that. But this, I would say, is even more. I would say this is even more of a, because this isn't about people selling meth to pay for their cancer treatment. This is just about the struggle to exist in life. But I do want to get into spoilers and dig into the aspects of the show that I really loved. So I would highly recommend checking it out. It is on Netflix. 10 episodes. It is, I think they were short episodes. I think they're 30-minute episodes. Let me double check. But I think I burned through it pretty quick. Let's see. 39 episodes for the first episode. 33. So they're a little over half hour-ish. You could burn through it easy in a day, which is great. Especially, it's like there are definitely comedic parts. This will trigger almost every emotion. But yeah, it's, they're underdogs, they're overdogs, they're horrible people, they're people that you hope for. It's got everything. So I would recommend checking it out, but I do want to get into spoilers, so let me do that now. Right? You have both of these characters absolutely hate their lives. Like, one is trapped. Amy is trapped under her own success, right? Pursuing this level of success that isn't what she wants, but it's what she feels will make her husband proud, will make her mother-in-law proud, will make her parents proud. And having to put on a fake smile, always be happy, right? And even for the most pointless comment, she sells plants. And it's like customer service. Like, if anybody's worked customer service has felt that, where you're at work, you feel like shit, you're having a horrible day, and then you have this cheery customer come up, and you have to put on the fake happy face and be happy to see them and pretend like you're happy to help them despite the fact that you're dying inside. And you get that just through Ali Wong's performance, just by the look on her face in so many scenes. And then you have the other guy, Steven Yeun's character, Danny, kind of just hustling to survive, right? He hasn't, like, Amy's on the verge of selling her plant store to a big, giant home improvement store type of a company like a Lowe's. And Danny's just struggling to be a contractor, really more on the handyman level, but aspires to be a contractor. He aspires to buy a piece of land for his family that is in Korea because of legal problems his cousin is responsible for. And he wants to buy this land and build his parents a house. So that is kind of his dream. That is the pressure he's putting on himself. And he is not treated with any respect either, right? You see him installing like a Ring doorbell. Ring doorbells, by the way, play a big part in this show. Probably a sponsor, I would imagine, on some level. But he's not treated with any respect either by a lot of people.
Let's take a quick break right now to talk about, are you a fan of original artwork and live events? Look no further than the Many Faces series by Ray Taylor and the weekly live stream over at youtube.com/Inspired Disorder. This ongoing series explores the endless possibilities of the human face through abstract ink paintings on paper, capturing unique expressions of emotion, mood, tone, and energy in just a few minimal features. Join me every Thursday at 4:20 Pacific Time as I paint live. Follow the Many Faces series and discover the endless possibilities of the human face. Don't miss out on this opportunity to be part of the action and own a piece of original artwork by me, Ray Taylor. Head to youtube.com/Inspired Disorder every Thursday to catch the live stream, and visit inspireddisorder.com to browse and purchase the Many Faces artwork. And now, let's get back to the show.
And the opening of the show is perfect, right? It sets up the frustrations that they both deal with. With him dealing with a return, and you don't even see why he is frustrated. You just see Like, from his perspective, it almost kind of looks like he might be pulling off a scam because he's returning a bunch of hibachis. The cashier is acting like he is probably pulling off some kind of scam that he just doesn't understand, because apparently this is the third time he's not only returned these like 4 hibachi grills, but also a carbon monoxide detector, right? But he definitely has a frustration. When we find out what he was going to be using those for, it completely, like, this show on a rewatch is even better, because there are so moments where, as the audience, you are making assumptions about characters. And when you see the reality of why they were doing what they were doing, it is so much more, they are so much more sympathetic. Like, when watching this, I thought it was like, he was pulling it. It's like, I would assume that too. I would assume whatever that cashier. Maybe I wouldn't have been a dick to him like the cashier was, passive aggressive, whatever, causing him to just like give up on the return because he couldn't find the receipt, but also not really given time to look for the receipt. So like he has this frustration going to the car, trying to put on your seatbelt when you're frustrated. It's like, even when you're mentally frustrated, your car knows to not be nice to you. And that feeling where you have to calm everything down just to put your seatbelt on because it keeps catching as you're trying to buckle up fast out of rage. And then to be confronted with somebody who has a level of success, has a level of income to where they have a nice white SUV, right? And you accidentally almost back into them, right? Not on purpose. He's just a little frustrated, pulled out a little bit too fast, right? It could happen to anybody. But for this white SUV to stop and hold on the horn, like it is an extended horn honk that this person is doing, right? Like, this is a person who is talking down to you via horn, that is like trying to shame you via car horn, right? So his frustration of like, fuck you, especially knowing that the dude has been getting these hibachi grills to kill himself, right? And this is the fourth time he's decided not to. But life is like, who gives a fuck for him? He doesn't feel like he has a whole lot to live for anyway. So when this person is treating him like this, he's like, well, fuck you. Let's do this then. And I've had, never to this extent, but I've definitely had moments like that where it's like, fuck you. Let's do this. I don't care. Bring it, right? And amazing car chase. How it ends with her kind of, and he never gets to see her face, with her kind of getting the best of him, getting away, and even backing into him, right, to do what he did to her. Basically, I'm sure she was scared. We don't see her perspective of it until much later on in the series, and she was scared as well. And that was like her inciting. Like, both of these people had their turning point in that moment, right? When he almost backed into her and she got scared and she's like, fuck this. And she makes that switch. And the same thing with him, where he's like, you're going to flip me. Like, first you honk for like an excessive amount of time, then you're going to go and flip me off. It's like, this is it, right? They both had that turning point right about at the same time. And how it ends, where she's able to put him in that same kind of fear position, thinking she's going to back into him, was great, right? Kind of a great way to open this, kind of a great way to show that inciting event. Right? Great opening. You get the title card, beef, and the only title card that it feels, it doesn't seem like a David Cho piece of artwork. All the other ones I know are, because I can usually spot his work, whether it's watercolor or inks, whatever it is. I can kind of spot his style. And then you have kind of this back and forth, right? He goes and he gets into her house, makes up a story, pees on her bathroom. And then you see that, like, at the end of the episode, him running away and then her realizing and then chasing after him. And seeing her face, like this incident lights a fire, seeing that he comes. It's almost like two children, two siblings beating up on each other, testing each other, like two sparring partners in a gym going after each other, maybe going a little hard, but it like lights a fire. There is a look of joy in her face that seems different from the fake happy that she puts on. Seems different than the look she puts on when she sees her husband, who is toxically joyful at all moments. Right? It's so good. So good. Right? Sets up everything. Sets up both of them, their frustrations. Sets up, like, okay, like, you can kind of understand why they go back, on some level, are going back and forth. Because they realize they're a willing sparring partner, right? It went past, Steven Yeun took it past just the road rage incident. And she, then goes on to Yelp, and it's like, it starts this thing where they're going back and forth against each other. But then it affects everything in such a toxic way. Like, you see him almost light her car on fire, but he sees her daughter June in the car. You see her and his brother get together, and seems to be like they bond over, like, one of the first questions, which I thought was great, which was him asking what she hates. She's like, I've never been asked that. And it's clearly something that, like, I think a lot of people bond over what they hate more than what they like. Like, if you can bond on what you can talk shit about, then that's probably going to be a good bond versus, like, because people just don't really talk about things they like in the same ways with the same kind of energy of the things they hate. And if you hate something that's different than somebody else, then every time they vocalize that hate could almost feel like an attack on you. So if you could find somebody that you bond over hate, that's a solid relationship, I would say. And just hope that neither of you grow. Hopefully the hate isn't like some kind of institutionalized racism or homophobia or transphobia. It's not some like right-wing breed of hate, that it is like you hate the injustice in the world. You hate billionaires, right? You can bond over maybe your right type of political affiliated hate. Although I'm sure the hate that happens on the other side makes sense as well, right? You have, which I actually liked her connection with Paul, right? Until he wanted money and started acting like kind of didn't really have respect for what it took for her to get where she is, right? Acting like success and being a millionaire is something that can easily happen if only he was given some money, right? And how that ended was a bummer. But I liked their, like, because it seemed like they fit in some ways. Like he got to her in a way that she had been wanting and wasn't getting from her husband. Then you have Danny and George pretending to be Zayn, right, on their like bike rides. And I love that when George comes clean to Amy about cheating with her assistant, and she thinks that he's cheating with Zayn. I thought it was hilarious. And there's many times where they're face-to-face, where Danny and Amy are face-to-face. And, like, whether it's at George's event or them meeting in the parking lot where she wants to give him money to kind of take the fall for the road rage incident because people are starting to investigate. I also love that a lot of times in those moments, there's like a genuine bonding moment. Like when Danny comes to George's thing and he asks her, like, so is this like, are you able to finally stop, or are you still hustling, kind of a thing, right? And one of many times she will say, or characters will say, like, it never ends. It's always fading. You're always having to kind of grasp things, get out of your grasp. A common theme that, like, even the billionaire says, right? And then when she goes to pay him off, she's like, I'm a small business. You're a small, well, maybe you're a micro business, but like, I believe in you. Like she wants him to do well. And how they both blow up on the guy who's like waiting to get in one of their spaces as they're having amazing, right? You're seeing kind of this bond slowly materialize through the course of these episodes. So good. And she kind of wants to help him. Obviously, that is a constantly back and forth. Like even within scenes, they will go from like being friendly to being enemies, and like back and forth constantly, versus like his cousin Isaac, played by David Cho, who just wants to use him right as a cover. He just wants to use him, doesn't really care about him. I mean, I guess on some level he wants him he wants to share the success with him, but he's doing it clearly in a way that has already hurt the family, caused his parents to go back to Korea, you know. So everybody's bad in this show, right? But both leads, amazing actors. Everybody else involved is great as well. David Cho, like I said, he plays the cousin, Isaac. And everything Isaac does and says, how he acts, is very David Cho. Back in the DVD ASA days, the podcast he did with Asa Akira, he showed all of that range. He showed all of those emotions. It was a show where he went off on people. For those that don't know who David Cho is, he is a super interesting guy. He's done the show Thumbs Up on Vice, where he hitchhikes across America. But he's a guy who is an artist, one of the most wealthiest artists on the planet right now, I'm sure. He, before getting rich in art, he's always been an artist, but before that, he got into gambling, became a millionaire gambling, right? Kind of had an addiction, went away from that, started doing his art more, like basically just decided to raise the prices of his art to like ridiculous amounts, and then people just started buying them. And he also got commissioned to paint the offices of Facebook in the early days of Facebook. He was given stock in the early days of Facebook. So obviously, as Facebook has exploded, I don't know how much of that he still owns. I'm sure he's diversified into other things at this point. But he is not want for money, David Cho. Also, obviously, he did a show on Hulu for a bit, or FX for a bit, the Cho Show, where he interviews people. Kind of a mixture of him painting with also kind of podcast a little bit. DVD ASA was the thing that I really fell in love with his work as a person, and that's where you saw these things. So like when his character is like has all this money and loaning money to people, David Cho is a multimillionaire, and I'm sure has had conversations like that with people where he's out to go eat and they want to talk money before they even get their food, and he gets angry. Or when he meets somebody he hasn't seen for a while and he's like, give me I want a face-to-face hug, none of this shoulder-to-shoulder, I want tip-to-tip. Right? Those are things that David Cho would say, and has said similar things in everything. Like the way he speaks is brought to this character. How he can be just super angry, and like when after him and Danny get busted in Vegas and he is on house arrest and he's telling Danny, you work for me now, and he's super angry at Danny, and then on a dime switches when he takes a bite of that bread and he's like, oh, this bread is really good. Or when they first meet after he gets out of prison, when he's first introduced, and he has that self-reflective moment where he's like, I actually need to calm down. Like this is something I'm working on, because David Cho is perpetually always working on himself. So there are so many things. The rage, kind of being dominant and putting people down in that way, the yelling, like all of these things, all of these emotions and rages and fluctuation of tones were present in David Cho doing the podcast DVD ASA. So it's great to see all of those things, those extremes of that are within him, expressed in a great way in this show. And I would say the most acting he does in this is something that felt like off was when he's robbing the billionaire, which is also a great scene. But I thought it was amazing to see, and I heard his performance was great. I think Santinos talked about it on his podcast at one point, and I totally agree. Right, his ability to be that character, to be Isaac, is great. That cousin who is constantly in the import-export business, constantly hustling, buying and selling sketchy stuff. Right, always great.
Let's take a quick break from this episode to talk about Attention all Ray Taylor Show fans! We're excited to announce we've just released a line of exclusive merchandise featuring original artwork inspired by the show. Our high-quality shirts and biodegradable phone cases are a perfect way to show your support for the show and make a great gift for any fan. Plus, with each purchase, you'll be helping us continue to bring you great content. So don't wait. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com now and check out the full collection. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll show your support by grabbing some Ray Taylor Show merchandise today. And now, let's get back to the show.
And you find out their mom, Amy's mother-in-law, she's having financial issues, and how that kind of plays into everything. It kind of adds a whole different dynamic, especially for a character. Like, there's so many times where, whether it's Danny and the hibachi grills or her mother, and how she is just looks down on everybody, pretentious. Her husband was a famous artist. Her son is kind of a disappointment with his art, never really done anything, kind of a spoiled guy. She's always talking down to Amy, always negging her, criticizing the remodel she did on her house, not being supportive or positive in any way, versus her son is toxically the other end of the spectrum, which has to be, I'm sure, a mindfuck for Amy. But when you find out that she doesn't have money, it's just oh, of course. And the fact that she's still being horrible to the person that she needs money from is just, it's just one of those things that you see in families a lot, where it's just why are you doing this? It's well, they're families. That, the explanation for doing good things for bad people, the explanation of that being their family, to me, who's not close with any of my family, is just insane. Really no good people. Amy's husband, George, toxic positivity. Also, in some ways, cheating. Maybe not have had a sexual relationship, but clearly is fantasizing about this girl, liking this girl that works with his wife. He is not only emotionally entangled with this person that is not his wife, but somebody that she knows. It's if it would feel like a personal attack, right? And this guy is spoiled, right? I kind of feel bad for this guy on some level, right? He comes from a dad is a famous artist. His mom, clearly his biggest fan, his dad's biggest fan, helps sell his art, knows the right stories to tell to push the art piece, to sell the art piece. But so I'm sure he's grown up in that shadow of his dad, and struggling. I think probably he's never developed his own style, because he was always trying to be his dad in some way in what he made, and his work is not very good, but I think he was always trying to be somebody else instead of just trying to see who he is as an artist and how to develop that. And even how his mom talks about June and her art is kind of a bummer. She's training somebody to be a good artist rather than allowing somebody to develop who they are as an artist on their own. I think there's probably two forms of school. I'm more of the find your voice, develop your voice, because I refuse to believe there are rules. I think there are things you can do that have been proven to work in the past, and you can do those things, and people call those things rules. But I think rules are broken all the time by people that don't follow them, and I think there's nothing wrong with breaking rules. And if you're able to create something that's outside of rules that people relate to, then that's all that matters, is that somebody resonates with the work you do. And he's got, like, George, fragile ego. Like, even when the cops are on the phone with him during the kidnapping, they're so tired of him. It's like, okay, George, you can go. You don't need, like, he's about 6 foot. Actually, he's probably about 5'11". Like, clearly, like, his ego is constantly being hurt and at risk to being broken. The neighbor, Naomi, when she kind of starts to investigate, but also her networking and in many ways kind of sleeping to the top, trying to be a person of note without having to do anything of note in many ways. And selfish, as we saw in the last episode where she closed the escape room door a little bit soon. Absolutely brutal scene. But she couldn't wait. She's like, nah, I got to save myself. Sorry, lady. Which is probably the one moment I actually liked about her. And there's great setups in this show. There are setups that happen they seem so nonchalant, and when they come back, it is so amazing. Like when Paul teaches Amy the armbar in Vegas while they're just wrestling around, just kind of enjoying each other, right? Bonding, playing, having fun. It just makes sense. He's in Vegas. His boy, in quotes, his boy is of Vegas, is an MMA fighter. I mean, so he knows some basic jiu-jitsu, knows what an armbar is, and seeing how she uses that in the last episode, I laughed and clapped. I was like, that is such a great setup. The gun that obviously the Chekhov's gun that exists throughout the show, the escape room where at one point the billionaire is pulled away to go take a look at different escape rooms and how that actually comes into use at the end. The ideas of birds, whether it's the first title, The Birds Don't Sing, They Screech in Pain, or the story that Michael, played by Andrew Santino, tells the other kind of bad guy, henchman kind of a guy, Bobby, about the experiment with birds and Dick Cheney, and how that experiment becomes realized at the last episode, where you have the beginning of the last episode, you have these crows having a discussion about how one of them was fed by Danny, so they like Danny, so they're not going to do anything to him, and the other one had a gun pointed at by Amy, which if you see that scene when Amy's flipping out with the gun in her house, there's a bird in one of her rooms that she, a skylight in a room that she scares off with the gun, right? And you see how that comes back to bite her. These birds attack her in that last scene, helping Danny survive. It's like this things, and then also the Dick Cheney mask that they wear during the robbery. A lot of setups, a lot of great payoffs. And also Amy had the story about her mom, how when she came to America, she'd never heard birds chirp because in Korea they had eaten them all, right? Also in reference to birds, it's the story of Danny at the church when Isaac Crickets died. Danny used them to feed a wounded crow. And the final episode is kind of perfect, right? You have these two characters that we've seen battle it out, cause destruction in their lives, everybody else's lives around them, and finally they're kind of forced to survive together. Nobody else is around, no way to escape, right? They're forced to rely on each other to survive, right? Also, it has some of the funniest scenes, right? The way they drift so effortlessly from enemies to allies and back and forth just within a scene is just amazing. Whether it's them yelling at each other across this ravine and then finding out that Paul might be dead and like instantly changing to sympathetic and like it's clear they have like they feel like siblings in such a way where siblings in many ways are able to do that, where they're able to like be violent and evil and mean to each other, but then on a dime switch and still be loving and like unconditional love for each other, which is crazy to me. But it's such an interesting connection they have, right? Everything is so temporary, right? Depending on just kind of what their personal wants are at any given moment. And then you have the elderberry scene, which I thought was amazing. Probably one of the best. I use the majority of scenes that involve psychedelics in shows. I've never used psychedelics, so maybe my opinion, take it with a grain of salt. But most of them are garbage. This scene, I think, is amazing and also feels like what is happening now that psychedelics are being legalized for therapeutic use. It really feels like these two people are doing like a group therapy session where they both have similar pasts, both have similar traumas, both are hiding who they are, both have made bad decisions in their lives, and are on this thing where they, in one scene, become one. They become each other, right? The whole catch-22 of life, her tattoo, kind of having an interesting meaning in reference to everything with the show and their lives. Both think they're dying, coming to grips with their dying, coming to grips with their mistakes, forgiving themselves on one level. And I think that's why, I think because they're able to bond in that way and they're able to realize who they are and what they are and possibly move past that, especially thinking they're both going to die and then waking up covered in branches still alive, letting out kind of a cathartic laughing like joy that they are still alive. How ridiculous it is that they're both still alive. So when the very end hit me so hard, I think it's because we get this moment, we really see them bond in a way that never would have been expected, and they were forced. There was nothing, it wasn't planned. It was just them trying to survive and coming out the other end, right? And the pressure they have of keeping just so much of their lives hidden, right? Dealing with so much pressure, and then finally finding a release after all of that, right? Somehow surviving it together. And no family, no friends, no other human being in their lives knows them better than they know each other in this moment. And so at the end, it hits me so hard, right? In so many ways, they're perfect for each other. They are damaged in so many of the same ways. They've clearly, like, there's clearly been, when she chases him down in that first episode and she almost has a look of like, this was kind of fun, right? And they're back and forth. They've both gotten joy out of that. So at least in that moment at the end, it's perfect for them. At the very end, when they're in the hospital, right, in that moment. But this fucking show, could not believe that it made me cry so hard at the end. So I was not expecting it. Same thing happened in terms of endearment. In the hospital scene, in terms of endearment. Like these hospital scenes out of nowhere, I think it's because you know these characters so well, and you see that there's finally this transition to them getting past their pain that for whatever reason makes me cry. Right? But as the show also shows, everything fades. Nothing ever lasts, right? This show in so many ways is so much more than just great performance, so much more than an interesting premise of road rage. Those aspects really allow the show to be about how hard life is, the struggle of life, the struggle to be the right son to your parents, the struggle to be the right wife to your husband, the right mother to your daughter, the right daughter-in-law, the struggle to be a good person and to do the right things, the struggle to be honest with yourself, to yourself and to the world, struggle to deal with the bad choices you've made in your past, the things that you've kept hidden that keep piling up, that stack of Hershey's wrappers underneath a lamp. They keep piling up until the lamp tips over. And is any of it worth it? Is success, is the struggle to do all these things to reach this level of success, is any of that stuff worth it? Sometimes just surviving one more day is the only kind of success that you need, right? Whether it's dealing with the pressures they're dealing with, whether it's dealing with the depression and suicidal thoughts that Danny's dealing with, sometimes just making it through the day to another, whether it's accidentally eating poison out in the wilderness, sometimes waking up under a tree covered in branches, as long as you're still alive, is a success. You successfully survived another day, and you have another opportunity to make different choices in your life, another opportunity to be nice to birds and nice to yourself. I want to thank you all for tuning in to The Ray Taylor Show. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on the Netflix series Beef. Don't forget to tune in every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for more reviews on movie and TV shows. And join the conversation by leaving a comment or a rating on your favorite podcast platform or over on YouTube. Until next time, enjoy the show. New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.